There was a morning when the world held its breath. Screens flickered red, traders froze, and the heartbeat of the global economy stumbled. For the first time in generations, the question no one dared to ask suddenly felt real. What if the dollar collapses? People like to believe empires end with wars, not spreadsheets. Yet on that day, the danger didn't retreat, whispered through interest rates, frozen credit lines, and nervous faces staring at empty ATMs. The dollar, the symbol of safety, the anchor of nations, was shaking. If you had felt it, you'd remember that quiet panic, the disbelief that something so enormous could simply vanish. Because the truth is, every civilization tells itself the same story. Our money will last, our promises will stand, and every time, history answers the same way. Now, to understand how close we came, we need to see how it all began. Every empire builds its power on something it swears will never crumble. For the United States, that foundation was the dollar paper backed by faith, industry, and the illusion of infinite strength. After World War II, while Europe lay in ruins and Asia rebuilt from ashes, America held most of the world's gold and nearly all of its trust. From Bretton Woods to Wall Street, the dollar became more than money, it became belief itself. Oil, trade, savings, even dreams were priced in green. People stopped seeing it as paper and started treating it as truth. Nations stored it. Families built futures around it. The world's heartbeat synced to the rhythm of a single currency. But history never honors permanence for long. Because when faith becomes routine and stability turns into pride, the seeds of collapse begin to grow quietly long before anyone notices. And in 1971, those seeds began to bloom. By the summer of 1971, the math no longer worked. The United States had spent years printing dollars it couldn't tee back, financing wars abroad and promises at home. Foreign nations, once confident in America's stability, started lining up to trade their paper for gold. But the vaults were thinning. Behind closed doors, panic grew. The numbers didn't lie. If every dollar holder demanded their share of gold, there simply wasn't enough left. On August 15th, President Richard Nixon appeared on television with a calm smile and carefully chosen words. He announced what would later be called the Nixon shock. The U.S. would temporarily suspend the dollar's link to gold. That temporary decision changed the world forever. Overnight, the promise that every dollar could be redeemed for something real was gone. The currency became pure faith-backed, not by metal, but by trust in government restraint. Most Americans barely noticed. Their paychecks looked the same. Prices hadn't yet shifted. But in that quiet moment, the dollar lost its anchor. Empires rarely fall in a single day. Sometimes they simply drift away from truth and toward delusion. And as the gold disappeared, the world began searching for a new way to believe in the dollar. When gold vanished from the equation, something else had to replace it. The world still needed a reason to trust the dollar. Aunt Washington found one buried beneath the deserts of Arabia. In 1973, a quiet deal was struck with Saudi Arabia. Every barrel of oil sold to the world would be priced in US dollars. In return, America would guarantee the kingdom's security. It was a pact of convenience and survival. Almost overnight, demand for dollars surged again. Nations needed them not for gold, but for energy itself. The petrodollar was born, and faith in America's currency was reborn with it. But this new foundation wasn't metal, it was politics, a fragile web of alliances and promises. The dollar had found a new god to serve, and its name was oil. For a time, the system seemed unbreakable. Until, decades later, the illusion began to fracture again. It started like every other crisis, slowly, quietly, invisible. Bad loans bundled into beautiful lies, banks selling debt like candy, rating agencies stamping approval on ticking bombs, and the world addicted to cheap money couldn't stop buying. By 2008, the house of cards had reached the sky. When the first one fell, the wind did the rest. Lehman Brothers' 150 years of prestige collapsed in a single weekend. Traders stared at screens showing numbers that no longer made sense. Credit froze. Fear became contagious. The global machine that ran on dollars was seizing up. People withdrew cash, not to spend it, but to see it, just to feel that it still existed. Banks didn't trust banks. Companies couldn't pay salaries. For a brief, terrifying moment, the entire financial bloodstream of the world stopped flowing. And yet, amid the chaos, came the greatest act of financial defiance in modern history. The US Federal Reserve printed trillions money from nothing to flood the system with oxygen. It worked. Markets gasped back to life. But there was a hidden cost. Every new dollar created to save the system quietly weakened its foundation. The cure was the same poison that caused the disease. That autumn, the world realized something profound. The dollar didn't survive because it was invincible. It survived because the alternative global collapse was worse. And as the printing presses roared, a new era began, one where money was infinite, but trust was not. Look closely at history, and you'll see the same story told in different costumes. Rome stretched its currency until silver became dust. Byzantium diluted its gold until traders laughed at its coins. Revolutionary France printed promises until bread cost a fortune. Each time, leaders insisted, this time is different. Each time, they were wrong. Empires never recognized their reflection in the mirror of collapsed day. Only see progress, innovation, and destiny. Until one day, confidence cracks and the illusion dissolves. The United States is not Rome, nor Byzantium, nor France. But the rhythm is familiar. Overspending, overconfidence, and the quiet arrogance of thinking a system can outsmart history. The faces on the coins change. The mistakes do not. And while the lessons repeat, only the prepared ever listen. Because in every fall, there are survivors, and their stories teach what faith alone cannot. When the dust of collapse settles, not everyone lies in ruins. Across centuries, a pattern endures. Those who endure are never the ones who trusted blindly. They're the ones who questioned early, saved quietly, and held something real when everything else turned to paper. In Byzantium, it was gold. After the Black Death, it was land. In Florence, it was liquidity. During the Great Depression, it was skilled ability to create, repair, and trade when money lost. Meaning, survivors understand that true wealth isn't stored in banks or balance sheets. It's stored in what you can produce, protect, and adapt. Every crisis rewrites the rules of value, and every survivor rewrites themselves first, because while collapse punishes faith, it rewards readiness. And those who learn to build amid the ruins are never poor for long. The dollar survived. Every storm was recessions, panics, even its own lies. But survival isn't immortality. Every rescue came with a cost, every bailout with a scar. Today, the dollar stands not because it's flawless, but because the world still needs something to believe in. It remains the last pillar holding a fragile order together. Yet pillars crack quietly before they fall. Confidence erodes, not with explosions, bought with size. The dollar still lives, but the idea of its permanence died long ago. And when belief is the only thing left holding value together, it doesn't take collapse, it only takes awakening. Every empire believes it's different. Every generation thinks it has outsmarted the past, but history is patient. It waits, it watches, and then it's reminded. The dollar didn't collapse in fire or fury, it nearly died in silence. Its heartbeat slowed through wars, debt, and the quiet arrogance of thinking confidence could last forever. But survival is not victory. It's a warning disguised as a second chance. Look back. Rome diluted its silver to buy time. France printed promises until bread became a luxury. Byzantium stretched its gold so thin that faith, not metal, held the empire together until faith cracked. Each collapse came not from chaos, but from comfort, from the belief that this time it's different, and the United States, for all its innovation and resilience, now walks that same familiar road, the one paved with good intentions and borrowed money, the one where people mistake paper for power and policies for permanence. But here's what history teaches. Value can't be decreed, only earned. Real wealth lives where inflation, politics, and panic can't reach it. Inside skill, resilience, and creation, the ability to produce, to build, to feed, to adapt. That's what has always survived this storm. When the gold vanished, the world found oil. When oil falters, it will find something else. Because money isn't the root, it's the reflection. What it mirrors is trust, productivity, and human cooperation. When those break, no currency, no matter how mighty, can stand. So the question isn't when the dollar dies. The question is, who are we when it does? Will we be the ones staring at screens, waiting for institutions to save us? Or will we be the few who learned the oldest rule in history, that no government, no empire, no economy is safer than the people who create real value? If you strip away the flags, the slogans, the numbers on a screen, what remains is the same force that rebuilt every fallen world before ours. Human ingenuity. And maybe that's the real lesson. The day the dollar almost died wasn't just about money, it was about memory. A reminder that the foundation of every civilization isn't paper. It's trust, work, and the courage to start again when illusions fade. Because history doesn't repeat, but it never forgets.